much as we've learned about ocular surface disease, there is still so much yet to be discovered. The good news is, this creates a world of opportunity for eye care providers.
The goal of this podcast is to better understand this chronic and complex condition and keep you up to date on the advances being made in its diagnosis and treatment. So let's get to the point. Welcome to another episode of the To The Point podcast. My name is Jackie Garlich, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jessilin Quint. Jessilin, we just got back from AOA Optometry's meeting. How do you feel?
We did it. We survived a marathon of a week.
We did. I'm still tired, but it was fun. I had a great meeting. How was yours? Good?
It was really good. I think this was one of the biggest meetings for AOA's history. So it was just, it's always great to connect with colleagues. I love being part of, ad boards and learning about the newest things that are coming out. And, we lectured and our guest was there as well, who I also got to lecture with. We shared the podium. And
You
I have to
did.
say, he's actually like one of my favorite people to lecture with because I feel like he's like a silent giant in the sense that you look at him, he's like so cool, calm, and collected, but he's like this powerhouse of information. And it's like, we're lecturing and then he throws out this like amazing tidbit of knowledge. And I'm just like, hold on, let me pull up my notebook real quick.
No, I'm so happy to. So, if anyone could guess, I'd give this one clue, and then I feel like people would be like, "Oh, I know exactly who this is." Think of the tallest optometrist that you know. Who might that be? It's Vin T, everyone.
Woo! Welcome, Vin!
Thanks, guys. That's so funny because, like, in clinic, all my patients, they don't like really remember my name. They're just like, I just want the tall doctor. Give me
The
the
tall
tall.
guy.
I like that guy.
Oh.
I love it.
Vin, I'm so happy to have you. Let me do a more formal introduction for our audience who may not know you. I'm sure many of people do because you are such a great advocate in the optometry, space. But Vin is a super interesting guy if you guys don't know Vin. He was born in Paris. He grew up in France and then ended up moving to the US and at age 16 moved to California. He's, like I said, super involved in like optometry and propelling the profession forward. He's the immediate past president of the Kern County Optometric Society, and Vin was a residency coordinator affiliated with the Southern California College of Optometry. He's currently the director of the Dry Eye Center of Excellence at Empire Eye and Laser Center, which is where he works. And in his spare time, he volunteers with One Sight to provide free eye exams to the underserved population, his local community, and internationally. And he's super tall, as we have, discussed, which is a great characteristic, but he's also so smart. He's fluent in both French and Cantonese. Vin, you're incredible. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome. Just like you guys, just trying to recover from, an awesome week in Minneapolis. It's always nice to be, amongst our colleagues and just rubbing shoulders with you guys and just catching up, just
I
having a great time.
know. It was so nice. It was our first time lecturing together, you and I didn't know you and Jesselyn lectured together too. It was a pleasure. I was so happy to share the
This is
stage
like
with
meant
you.
to be.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Vin. I sort of said some of these characteristics, but like, tell us about your clinic and then this like dry eye boutique kind of practice that you have that you are the director of. Tell us all about
Yeah.
it.
So as of like 2 weeks ago, I've been with this particular practice 16 years.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. I don't understand that. But so obviously I went to SECO for optometry school, and then right after optometry school, I did a brief stint at Lens Crafters. So I worked at Lens Crafters for a couple of years, and that was supposed to be like a temporary pit stop, right? I mean, it's like I live in Bakersfield. I was originally from the Arcadia, Pasadena area, And then they were like, oh, okay, well, we can give you a job in the Pasadena area if you want, but we also have this, job up in, Bakersfield. I was like, oh, where's Bakersfield, right? And so then went up there, and then I got recruited out of that lens crafters for the current ophthalmology practice that I'm at right now, because that was the referral center that I was sending all my patients to. They were like, oh, hey, we're looking for medical optometrists, and you've been referring all these patients, and you've been pretty much on point with your diagnosis. We want somebody to come and work for us. And at that time, I was like, yeah, I'm ready for like some change, because retail is retail. And then, so then I started working in medical optometry and doing a lot of, pre-op, post-op care and all of that jazz. And then I just slowly refined my craft. And, I'd always loved dry eye, ocular surface, because I myself was suffering from, my Meibomian gland disease at the time, right? I remember taking a webinar with Paul Karpecki where he was just kind of like, there's nothing much we can do for MGD, do some warm compresses and do this, and that's about it. And I was just like, man, that sucks. And I just got into, just refining my craft and experimenting and helping patients and doing all of those just specialty, dry ocular surface, and then becoming the director here at the clinic. And then now we're, because we're a referral center, we've got all these, local docs that are just kind of, dabbling a little bit in treating it. And they're like, I've prescribed a medication, and now I'm ready to just, go see Vin. He's going to take care of you. So that's how that's my story in a nutshell.
I love it. You've become the referral doc, where people
Yeah.
send their
Yes.
patients
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, I
that's
love it. It's kind of like what I was saying when we lecture. It's just like, being a dry eye, expert is great, because then it's like you have to like investigate. You have to be a diagnostician, right? Because it's so complicated, and then you just have to kind of like figure out, what the problem is. And I love doing that, because every day it's different. It's never the same thing.
that's true. I got asked on a minor side note this past week at AOA, if I could think of a fictional character that would make like a great optometrist, or in my mind, I interpreted that as like a dry eye doctor. I was like, who would that be? And I was like, maybe Sherlock Holmes, because of that investigation part of it. It's so true. You have to kind of uncover it. I also thought maybe Ted Lasso would be a good one, but I digress. So, so Vin, you've been in this dry eye space for a while, and you've probably seen like, all the different versions of dews that have came out. And I know this past week at AOA, but also just in the dry eye space, like Dews 3 is now available, and probably you, like Jackie and I, are still combing through these 200 plus pages, right, of the Dews 3 report. But what's kind of been your like take home, or anything that you've derived based on like the new Deuce 3, like any standout differences? Are you interpreting anything, or is it just kind of like confirmation of how our dry eye space has grown over, the last couple years?
Yeah, so for me, I like the fact that they kind of finally put a huge emphasis on my Meibomian gland disease, right? I mean, we've known, right? I mean, with Dews too, they've kind of dabbled in it a little bit and said, evaporative component and things like that. But with Dews 3, they kind of like went all in, and they said, hey, it's not, it's a big deal. And also the fact that they've sort of divided it up into like the different sort of categories, right? So you've got like the lids and how the lids affect, the ocular surface, and then you've got, things like Demodex and things like that. So I mean, I like the fact that it's now the big picture, right? It's not just like focusing on just like dry eye, right? It's not just dry eye. It's dry eye with, it's really, ocular surface disease. So that's why we kind of moved away from calling it dry eye disease, as opposed to saying it's more like ocular surface disease. Another key takeaway for me and I've been sort of, talking to my patients about this, is lifestyle, right? I mean, they've kind of, based on the 2023 lifestyle report, they've kind of reinforced a lot of that stuff. We know that the environment makes a huge difference. Even simple things like, sleeping with the ceiling fan on, and low humidity, and simple things like, like talking to your patients and saying, like, for me at least, it's like, here in Bakersfield, it's like super dry, super hot. And then, I'll ask them like, well, how do you guys feel when you're not in Bakersfield? And they're like, oh wow, you're right. I was at the beach and my I didn't think about my eyes at one bit. And as soon as I came back, my eyes are just bothering me and irritated and gritty and things like that. So it's like those are the lifestyle things, right? So I think that's huge because those are some of the things that we can kind of we need to kind of reinforce and remind the patients about.
Yeah, I totally agree. The environmental things can have such a giant impact, and there's so many things to kind of cover with your patient about the environment. Like, you don't know what people do when they leave your office. Like, who the heck know? I don't know what products are you putting on your eyes? What are you doing? Are you sitting in a car with all this air? I don't know what you do. So, like, I just feel like there's a lot to cover, which is where I personally like a handout for that to try to like, help summarize all of that. But I haven't fully admittedly dove into Deuce 3 yet, so I'm glad we're having this podcast. But I had a patient today who was not doing great when I saw her last, and I ended up doing a treatment, an in-office treatment on her, and she came back and she's doing better, and I'm like, oh, that's great. Do you think this thermal expression really helped? And she's like, to be honest, I got my gut really under better control. Like, I had all of these dietary things going on. And once my gut, felt like it was more normal, then my eyes started feeling better. And I was like, yes, totally. There's such a connection there. Does Deuce 3 touch on any of the gut? I don't know if you've read about this. You can, it's a huge document, so maybe you haven't covered it yet,
Yeah,
but
yeah. It talks a little bit about that, and like supplementation. It talks a lot about like supplementation, and how like it talks a little bit about the dream study, and how we've always had sort of like mixed, literature about, okay, is omega 3 good, is it not good? And I think they finally took a stance and said that I think that overall there's more benefit than negative the net, more net positive than anything else. They do talk a little bit about like gut biome and as well, because obviously we know that that definitely, just like what you said, anecdotally, I just have patients, just cut out refined sugar, and just cutting out refined sugar, they're like, I just feel better, and
yeah.
that's so.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a patient that I asked her to do Whole30 for that very reason because her glands it wasn't even just the thickness of the oil, it was the almost like when you would express like bubbly oil. Do you know what I'm talking about? Sometimes when you do that and it's like this it bubbles out like oddly. And anyway, but yeah, diet plays, such a huge role. I think I don't know if you feel like this, but the more we know, the more we don't know. That's kind of how I sometimes feel about trying. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, there's also this I need to address. But how do you think like the Dews 3 like will impact our colleagues and like to the dry community? Are people going to be looking at our patients differently? Like, what do you think?
I, that's the thing, right? I mean, like for us, we are well versed in it, and we're in it, and that's. I think that for us, it's easier for us to understand. But for our colleagues, it's just. I think it's just there's so much information overload, right? And it's going to be very difficult. And it's almost like when you have too much information, you don't know what to do first, right? So and so that's why whenever I try to give a lecture, I always try to kind of just take it one step at a time, do one thing. Don't try to do like 1,000 things because it's just it's too so complicated. I think that's going to be one unfortunate side effect of this report is just going to be like people are going to be like, okay, well, great, another report, another algorithm, another. What do I do now? I'm barely getting started. So.
That is true. It is, for those of us that love to like nerd out on this kind of stuff, it is a very comprehensive document, right? Where you could really like deep dive from anything to lifestyle factors to like the hormones to all of that. And they came up with these three algorithms, which in one hand, I mean, you have to give major props to the researchers that spent like years, right, creating this. I mean, the amount of work that was is just, really intense. And the three algorithms, but I think about for a lot of our, just like you said, Vin, a lot of our docs that are already like, what do I prescribe then? On one hand, I guess it's like a go-to, right? Because then you can kind of pick. But on the other hand, you pull up these three algorithms, right? And there's like 20 plus different options of how to treat it. And sometimes you just have to start, right? And so the beauty of those algorithms is that if something's not working, it's kind of a refresher, I feel like, to go back and you can kind of work through those different line items. And so I hope that our colleagues don't get overwhelmed by that and are just like, start, just start, and then we can kind of dip our toe in. One thing I really did kind of like is that it did emphasize how important like a patient questionnaire can really be. And so they came up with this OSDI 6, which is just like 6 questions, which is, we all use like maybe speed or OSDI. And so just a really quick six question questionnaire, and to really kind of get that patient buy-in, especially those that are symptomatic. Those are kind of like the low-hanging fruit to treat. So I did like that part. And if you look at the questions, it's almost like if you just have, even just the lowest amount for 6 of those, boom, you have dry eye, you should start pursuing treatment. So I think that that was really interesting. But I don't know, I really like the questionnaire part and the fact that it points out the very multifactorial components of it, which is just pretty
I
extensive.
think you made a good point, Jesselyn. Like it is really, you just have to start. I mean, like you said, Vin, it can get really complicated really quickly. And I will talk with colleagues who aren't as into it, and they're like, when are you using Mibo versus, varenicline, Tyrvaya versus like, when do you use all these things? And I'm like, I think I have my own protocol, which is probably different maybe than yours, Jesselyn, than yours, Vin. Like we all have our own protocols on how we treat it that we found have worked well for us, or we're still testing, And so I think it is a matter of just trying to dampen some of the all of the noise and find, okay, well, if I have an inflamed patient, what am I reaching for? Let's try this protocol. If I have this evaporative thing, what am I doing? What in office thing, or what, so I think you're right. People just need to sort of start and develop a protocol and then tweak it as needed.
Absolutely. So, then one other thing that there's a lot of buzz on Deuce 3 at AOA, right? But there was also a lot of buzz because there was a launch of Triptyr, which is this new, dry eye drug. So, educate us a little bit on like what it does, what you're excited about it, how you think it's going to impact your patients.
Yeah. Well, let me first say they nailed that name. That's just such a good name. I mean, I don't know how many years we've complained about how like they come up with these like dry names, and my book was kind of close, but Trip Tier, oh my God, that's just like my mind was blown when I heard that. I was like, that's just amazing. But yeah, so it's supposed to be a trip, which is a cold receptor, right? So they say they found that there's these cold receptors on the surface of the cornea that gets affected when you have dry eyes, right? So then you have sort of like, because of the evaporative issue, you get this sort of like cooling effect. And this cooling effect basically triggers these trip receptors on the surface to basically say, hey, it's cold, sends the signal to the brain through the trigeminal nerve and says, "Hey, I need tears," and then basically it stimulates the lacrimal functional unit, and then tells the lacrimal glands to secrete the tears, tell the goblet cells to produce some mucin, and tells the meibomian glands to kind of stimulate and produce a little bit of MGD. So what trip tears is supposed to do is it's supposed to activate those cold receptors, right? And by activating those cold receptors, you basically activate the lacrimal functional unit, which then tells your body to produce more tears. So then, when they looked at some of the data, they did some Schirmer testing, and they found that, they met the endpoints. There's definitely more tears on the ocular surface. The staining was improved. Um, I don't know on top of my head the exact data, but I think they found it like within like, like staining was like 14 days. I think the Schirmers is like maybe day 7 or something like that. Yeah, one day one. Yeah,
Yeah, day one there was improvement in tear production. Yeah, and Shermer. Yeah, so yeah,
so it's exciting.
it is exciting. I think it's I think I think of almost these as buckets now. Like we have our immunomodulators, which target our inflammation. We've got our anti-evaporative, which is, targeting our MGD, evaporation issues. And then we have this whole neuromodulatory category. And so I just, yeah, I just wonder, where how's that going to fit? And also I think we're really maybe re-understanding, or for me re-understanding the importance of basal tears. Like you're just tears that are there, that are produced by the lacrimal gland, goblet cells, and meibomian glands. There is this normal, tear, that is so incredible, and it's so complex and complicated. And if we can just get our body to produce that more, it seems as though the patient will do better. And that's what their data, is showing as well. So I don't, I'm still working it out in my head where I think I might use that for a patient, and excited to get it into clinic. It's not, when is it coming out? End of Q3, August or something?
I think so. I think it's pretty
Yeah,
quick,
they said
the
end of the
next few
summer.
months.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely, like you said. Yep, like the you call it the neuromodulator. I call it neurostimulator. That's how I chart it in my notes. So and it's exciting because I like neurostimulation because it affects multiple things, right? It's not just one thing, which is the beauty of it. So excited to try.
I think of this as, back to the chicken or the egg scenario, right? Because sometimes when we think about the story of inflammation, on one hand, if we could get ahead of it, right, and improve the homeostasis by preventing evaporation, making sure there's enough tears on the front surface, right, then that in turn would, hypothetically prevent any sort of inflammation that's there. So I think about some of my milder patients where I don't necessarily have a ton of like corneal staining, like severe inflammation. We could all argue that, any dry eye is inflammatory. But I think that I'm maybe going to be looking at that. And then having this new innovation makes me not skip out on measuring tear meniscus height. And sometimes I think we don't talk about that enough. And it's such a basic, like, you don't need any fancy equipment, right? We can all look at that. And every OD, whether you love dry eye or not, whether you're advanced or medically oriented, you'll know if it's like low or high. And so I feel like it just kind of calls out that very basic, as you scan across the lower lid, just look at that tear meniscus height. And sometimes when you really start looking for it, sometimes a lot more people are lower than you might realize. And I think sometimes a lot of loose conj, right, can also kind of blur the lines for that. Or if you just put a drop in, then obviously that can blur it. But I think that when this is available, I'm going to be like extra cautious on that part of it. And I feel like this plus working on like the evaporative piece, like increasing our tiers and then keeping them with MIBO, right, is going to be like this perfect kind of synopsis, at least in my head. We'll see clinically how that rolls out, but I'm
Yeah.
excited for it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we're still going to need to work on like gland production because that's so gosh everywhere. But yeah, I mean, I think, man, this could be like maybe something I'm reaching for first to see how my milder patients do with it. Yeah, it could be really good. I'm excited for it. So
Then you're gonna have to let us know for all of your like pre and post op, in your surgical side, but also in your dry clinic if it starts to make a big difference with your dry
Yeah,
eye.
yeah. I mean, so I was doing a lot of, so I'm putting into the category of like neurostimulators, so kind of varenicline, Trevia. I feel like that's kind of similar, right? So I've been combining it a lot with like IPL, right? So then, like, obviously, with IPL, we're changing the minimum consistency, we're decreasing the inflammation, and then I have varenicline as a kind of like a maintenance, because then it's like it's daily stimulation to express those meibomian glands, to get those meibomian glands and the tear, right? So I feel like that's going to be a good kind of like a one-two punch there with your IPL patients.
I think I mean, neurostimulation, this is really actually not that new. I think it sounds and seems kind of newer to a lot of us, but really we've had, what was the
True
Allergan
tier.
product where you stuck it up your, what is it called?
True tier.
True Tear. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
we had True Tear, which you stuck those little probes up the nose, which was a look. And then there's like there's on the outside of the skin, there was eye tier 100. Yeah, and then, varenicline, Tyrvaya, I just think the method of delivery has been challenging. And so now that we have this Triptyr, which is an eye drop that's dosed twice a day, it's certainly very familiar to doctors. I think sometimes there was a doctor barrier to prescribing a nasal spray. But this is a more familiar sort of delivery. And yeah, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we find this sort of fitting in our toolbox here.
Absolutely. So more to come once we get the details of pharmacy and all of that info. So, Vin, this wouldn't be a To the Point podcast if we didn't ask you what your life lens is. I can't wait because I feel like you always have really good recommendations. So I'm like on the edge of my chair waiting to hear what yours is going to be.
So in this day and age of I have a an AI tool for you. It's called Simple AI.
Hold on, I'm writing this
Hang
down.
on, let me get my pen. Okay, go ahead.
All right, tell
So
us
what it
more.
does is it calls any number that you want it to call, and it navigates anything so that you don't have to be on the phone at all.
Oh,
Wait,
So
wait, wait, wait. How are you using this? In your office? In your practice?
I'm using it personally, almost like an assistant. So it's almost like, think of it like a personal assistant that makes phone calls for you. So I need
I
to make dinner
love it.
reservations for 6 people at this restaurant at this time. Call this place, do it for me.
Oh,
I
I love
need to
it.
call Costco to reschedule the delivery of my mattress. Call Costco. Here's my information. Do this. I need to my son has a birthday party on Sunday. I need to order 8 pizzas. Call this place, order 8 pizzas. It is the best thing since sliced bread.
Oh.
Not having to be on the phone on hold is the best thing since sliced bread.
Oh my God, Vin, I was just on the phone for 25 minutes with Xfinity because I had to cancel our service. And I
You
was
can
like,
have simple
oh
AI do
my God,
that.
where were you, 1 hour ago when I was on this phone call?
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh
It's
my
but
goodness.
it's anytime you need to make a phone call and you need to do something. It's just I'm using it all the time now. It's just I don't have to call anybody. It's just like order takeout. Yesterday I said okay, well, on my way home I typed in the prompt. I said, hey, call this restaurant, order takeout, and it did it.
That is amazing.
It's
Simple AI. All
simple
right, I'm
AI.
writing this.
Yep. Yep.
That is a good one. I love
Yeah.
efficiency ones, you
Yeah.
know?
I know it's an efficiency thing. So
Ugh, gosh, I'm all for that. Great idea. Thanks, Vin.
yes, try it out. Let me know how you like it. It's really
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
And okay, so before we close here, if people want to reach out to you and talk to you and ask you questions or follow you, where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Instagram. I do have it's my account on Instagram is not public, but it's private. If you shoot me a request, you can email me if you want to email me. It's vdang at empireinlaser.com. But it's yeah. I mean, I'm on all the social. I'm not on TikTok. I'm not cool enough to be on TikTok.
Don't
Uh,
go, don't
I
go
don't think
over there.
I don't think any of us are cool enough to be on TikTok. But
I have a TikTok, but don't tell anyone. It's okay.
okay. Oh, the techie school.
TikTok is the only cool one. I do not have TikTok,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, Vin, thank you so much for being here. I always learn so much and we just appreciate your time. And I know this is like a Monday of Mondays for you. So we really do appreciate you being a guest on To the Point.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys. It was fun.